Hello, paisanos. I wanted to talk about in this video using your labs, this feature we have in healthcare every year, which people get labs to your advantage. And don't think of labs as something I do for the doctor to make a decision. Yes, that's generally true when you're caring for your chronic disease or your disease state. But if you are a healthy user or somebody who's trying to take control of their health on their own, then I'm going to posit that 1 year labs are not enough for you. You need every 6 months. I get mine every 4 to 6 months. Um, and I will tell you, your doctor doesn't mind, nor does your healthcare system. I work in health insurance, Medicare and Medicaid. And the healthcare system realizes that early screening and diagnosis decreases healthcare costs later on. So payers and insurers like paying for labs and diagnostics. They encourage it and they encourage the system. So doctors love referring you for diagnostics because there's more revenue to book and lab values, right? So don't feel bad about it. And if you're paying for health insurance, you need to use it. Use these benefits that you're paying for to your advantage, okay? If not, I think the cash cost of these things have come down a lot. So even if they don't want to cover certain labs, it's worth paying for it because money on your health is well spent compared to money at the pharmacy and doctor's offices later on. Trust me, I know people who live that life, and you do not want that life. You should do everything to try to avoid having your life rotate around your doctors and your pharmacists. Okay, you're going to get to know your pharmacist a lot if you don't do these things. So you don't want to be seeing me a lot. I'm trying to help you guys so you don't have to see your pharmacist a lot. So think of your lab value as a measuring instrument. And you measure stuff all the time. When you're cooking food, you taste it. When you're baking meat, burgers, steaks, you test the temperature. When you get paid, you check the balance on your bank account, make sure nothing came out, and you check your bills. So you always have a way to measure things in life. So think of these things as a way of measuring. Now, at home, people have measuring devices. Diabetics test their blood sugar. People who have high blood pressure have a cuff at home to measure, although their blood pressure, although that gives a lot of erroneous readings. So I tend to trust my doctor's office blood pressure reading. But now people have smartwatches and health trackers, and they will check your blood pressure, pulse. They'll keep a track of it for you on a log. And even your sleep, which is very important. They track your deep wave sleep so you can actually see how your sleep is every day and what affects it. I have a scale. Every day I measure it. I have the app and it logs it. And it measures my weight, my percentage body fat, my BMI, and a whole bunch of other metrics. And it logs it and I can trend it over the day. I have a food log app called Macro Factor, and I log all my food. And I've been doing it for years. So that in itself are measuring things you can do at home, and you keep track of your health, and you can actually make changes. The reason that I'm pushing you to engage and invest in measuring devices and start measuring on your own is because you can identify problems and make changes, not wait for a whole year. And change is kind of hard. Humans don't like to change, even though we are built evolutionarily for it, as I've mentioned before. But the psychology of change is very difficult. And if you wait a year to do it, you have 6 months in bad habits, again, that you have to change. Whereas if you have labs in 6 months and you need to change something, you change it a lot sooner. It takes about a month to cycle out bad habits, 1 to 2 months, some people 3. So you want to be making these adjustments quicker. Remember, you don't have much time. If you're watching this video and you're part of my target group, you don't have a lot of time left to waste on this, okay? The other thing with measuring instruments is it's important to keep them in context, and it's important to know what you're measuring. So your items at home, you can measure your blood pressure, your weight, and your labs are more medically geared, but you can tailor them to your health needs. But the other advantage to it is you can test your intervention. See, this is the key to this. This is the key message in this video. People go on these diets, these fad diets, like it could be carnivore, could be low carb, could be gluten-free. They take this supplement, they start doing this workout. But in order to believe in these things, to do it and invest in money, you have to believe the ideology. So you should always have one foot out the door where you're checking the data to check the bullshit on these things. Because if in 6 months or 3 months or 4 months, you're doing this diet plan and your weight and body fat have not come down, if your weight goes down, your blood pressure tends to go down. If your blood pressure is the same, it's really not working. If you pull your labs and you're looking at your maybe HbA1c and your lipids and that hasn't changed, then it's not working. It's time to change. And what people get caught up in a lot is they get on this health kick or a fad and they do it. And if they don't see results, they double down and they feel like I have to suffer more. I have to do it harder. No, if it's not giving you results in 3 to 6 months, then you need to change something. That's a general rule. And measuring instruments help that, right? For labs, once every 6 months will help you track certain things. Now, it's probably not salient to your physician if they're following your chronic disease. Remember, you go to a physician to say, okay, I'm going to diagnose you with this, and then you get moved to drug therapy. So they're your access point to get a prescription. To get an increased dose in a prescription or a prescription changed to another form of drug therapy. If you need a decrease in dose because your symptoms are getting better, you don't need a doctor for that. You can just do that on your own. I know lots of people who on blood pressure meds and call me and said, dude, I'm having these symptoms. I said, your blood pressure meds are not necessary at that dose because you're working out and you've actually lowered your blood pressure. So I'd advise you to skip this particular one, see how you feel, make an appointment with your cardio, have them remove one of these things or change the dose because you're going to become hypotensive. This actually happened to a friend of mine decades ago. He got diagnosed borderline hypertension at a younger age, started working out with me, and in 2 months, he started to get dizzy. He started to feel like shit dizzy. He had to stop his blood pressure meds. So he was so happy. He was like, dude, this exercise, these training sessions cured my hypertension. So they can actually help you before you get to the doctor, change things. And if you're a healthy user, that's important to you. Because like I said, the doctor stops at disease management. Your lifestyle changes is your responsibility, not the doctor's. So you're going to do labs more often for you, for the diet, exercise, lifestyle changes you're making. That contributes to your yearly visit at your doctor because that's going to change the trajectory of your chronic disease. Is it going to exacerbate? Is it going to be stable? Or is it going to start tracking down? Okay, and your doctor's decision is either to increase your therapy. Hey, you're doing good. Let's just keep your therapy. Oh, dude, you're doing really great. You're borderline diabetic. We can take this off. Borderline hypertensive. Take this off. You're sleeping good. Let's take out the Ambien. That's when you would see your doctor. Okay. Now for lab values, let's just go through. There are things that you can follow for micronutrients as well. So obviously your HbA1c will measure your diabetic risk for the last 3 to 6 months. Fasted glucose is overnight. They'll check your blood pressure. When you do lipids, you can pull things like lipoprotein B and A. Lipoprotein B will give you a lifestyle risk for cardiovascular disease. As I said in the video before, lipoprotein A is going to be your genetic risk. There's obviously the RBC white blood cell count panels. That's standard medical care, so I'll stay out of that one. We're just going to do it human performance. But a lot of your micronutrients you can pull. So as I've said in a previous video, I pull my vitamin D. My physician will pull C-reactive protein and homocysteine to get an idea of the amount of inflammation in my body. So my homocysteine was elevated. So she said, hey, your vitamin B is low. I started supplementing B complex, higher doses, and the homocysteine trailed off, For men, you want to pull a male panel, which is your testosterone panel. It'll pull your testosterone, estradiol, estrone, dihydrotestosterone, And that's going to kind of tell them where your testosterone level are, which dictates pretty much everything for a man, but also diabetic risk and obesity. And that too will give you, there are changes you can make that affect that, especially if you're on testosterone replacement therapy. So that's going to give you a snapshot twice a year as to if your health interventions are working. So I will tell you, if you're in a deficit and you're working out and you're losing weight, your blood pressure is going to go down. Your LDL panel will change. Your lipid panel will change. LDLs tend to go down as weight goes down. And as weight goes on, aromatization changes. So testosterone panels should improve. So basically, being in a deficit and training and working out is the tide that lifts all the boats, okay? So this is going to give you twice a year period where you can adjust. And I'll tell you how that affected me. But it's also going to force you to learn about these metrics, these lab values, because they have little nuances. Sometimes they don't mean what you think they mean. You have to apply the factor of time to them, okay? So let me give you an example. HbA1c measures 3 to 6 month risk. If you did an intervention last month in your diet and you pull labs and you get your HbA1c, remember that's your diabetic risk for 5 to 6 months. It's not going to capture the gains you got the last month. If you decided to take vitamin D as in dog now and you pull your labs next week, and next week happened to be your scheduled time, your vitamin D takes about whatever supplement concentration you're taking, takes about 2 to 3 months to get to peak trough levels. So you have to realize that the next lab is where I'm going to capture my real vitamin D levels based on what I'm taking. And the next lab is going to tell me what my diabetes risk is because I just started this diet, right? Now, this happened to me. Additionally, like C-reactive protein gives you an idea of inflammation or infections in your body. So it gives you a nudge to target something. So that's kind of how I identified my diverticulosis was causing my C-reactive protein to raise. Most doctors would point to a cardiac event, but my cardiac health is clear. So clearly this was not coming. So, this is what I wanted to tell you guys about your labs. Like, in addition to these whole measuring instruments, start getting a relationship where you want to see your doctor twice a year or get labs twice a year. But focus your labs on things that are salient to the lifestyle intervention you're doing. If you're diabetic and you're changing your diet and you start working out, you'll want to pull your HbA1c, your fasted blood glucose. You'd also want to watch your testosterone panel and make sure if you're a little bit obese, you're not aromatizing too much estrogen. Estrogen is going to cause weight gain, okay? Now, how did this affect me? It's important for even me as a clinician because I freak out on labs. I just did my labs and my HbA1c, which was fine, was elevated to pre-diabetic. And I was really confused because I changed my diet, but I forgot that it's a 6-month risk. Now, I adjust my diet for my workout. At the beginning of the year, I decided to do a high protein, very low fat, high carbohydrate meal, which kind of goes against the grain of what a lot of nutritionists say, but I just wanted to experiment with it. And about in August, 2 months ago, I just felt, just by looking at my weight, that I think I was starting to eat too much carbs. Now, my carbs normally hover around 220 grams a day with about 50 to 20 grams of fiber. It only went up 30 to 40 grams, but there were higher glycemic carbohydrates. I started to have carb creep because I wasn't satiated. Now, I saw my face getting rounder, but I saw the scale jump from 199, 200 to 201. And I said, no, something is really wrong here. So I had an honest discussion with myself. I looked through my macrofactor eating chart. I have all the data. I had the data with my weight. And I said, if this is climbing, something is wrong. So I switched my diet. I brought in fatty meat, saturated fat. And I stopped white bread, took out, reduced the amount of rice. Whatever sweets I occasionally had, tossed it out. And I would use dextrose for my workouts every day. I stopped the dextrose. I only use the dextrose on 2 heavy sprint days, and I reduced it from 2 scoops to 1. So what eventually started happening was because my meals were higher fat and my carbohydrate sources were primarily maybe 1 slice of wheat toast every other day, but mostly fruit. I ate less during the day. I now only eat 3 meals in a day. And from mid-August, from about 2 months ago to now, my weight dropped from 201 to 193. So that's what my conundrum was. Why was my HbA1c this way when I was in a deficit? And I realized the water is muddy because it's taken my diabetic risk when I was running a higher carb diet. Now, mind you, I still train hard every day, but with my genetics and the food I was eating, they were just too high glycemic for me. And so that I noticed that and I suspected it, but the lab value ex post proved it. But I'm already on the trend. So it's too early to capture the benefit. But I know I got benefit and I got healthier because my weight went down 7 pounds. My blood pressure normally the systolic runs 120, 122, 123 when I go to the doctor's office. Now that's after a bunch of espresso. This past 2 weeks, they were hitting 110 and 118. So as weight comes on, blood pressure drops as well. So this is how a lab value can kind of cause concern, but you have to understand what it means, you know? My vitamin D actually was at 90, it came down to 78, even though I'm still taking that 20,000 IU. So that made me pause, but that told me, I think that the past few months, the amount of time you're outside has decreased. So that's how you need to use the labs. That's how they should be used. And I encourage you as healthy users and students to kind of take charge of your labs and your measuring instruments. Don't just rely on the doctor. The doctor takes care of your health dysfunction, your disease, but you have to take care of everything else, your health and how you approach the disease. Remember, the doctors can tell you, send you for resources, but they will prescribe drug therapy, which we will administer and monitor for your disease state. How your disease state progresses is up to you. And I encourage you to use all the diagnostics tool to fact check yourself. And don't be afraid to change. Don't stick to a diet or a lifestyle or an exercise type because somebody says it. Check it for yourself and follow the advice, whether it's nutrition or training. Follow different people and get different thoughts. And don't be afraid to try things based. Eventually, you're going to get something that works, you know, and use this for anything. You can apply this just to your sleep. You can apply this if you have osteoporosis to supplementation and your bone density, okay? So pick things that you want to work on and just work on them. But just realize that obesity, if you tackle obesity, you're going to cure so many things on your weight and your body fat levels because there's going to be so much improvement in many other areas of your body. So it's kind of that kind of holy grail. It's hard to hit it. But once you start getting traction in something, keep going because that's going to change a ton of other health metrics, okay? All right, this is a long one, but stay healthy and get outside and work out.